Hello, everyone. Welcome to School After Hours podcast, where staff, administrators, and families keep their finger on the pulse of the wonderful world of OST programming, aka out of school time programming. I am your host, Jay Lee, and on today's show, we have leadership and organizational coaches Amy Brady and Lana Hailemariam with us. They'll be sharing their career journey and how they went from being educators and program developers in OST to coaching the practitioners in OST through their organization StandUp. Also, they'll be sharing details with us about their new venture, an e-learning platform called the Flourish Lab. But before we get into all those things, let's go to our Community Corner. Community Corner is a segment of our show that allows guests or myself to share tips, advice, or information with families, youth, and community members about the OST field. For this episode's Community Corner,
I asked Ms. Lana and Ms. Amy, what are 3 things practitioners can do to invest in themselves professionally, regardless if they are part-time or full-time employees? So listen up, clean out your ears real good, get a pen and a pencil, and let's take down some notes.
So I think first and foremost, if I'm going to list 3 things, the first thing I would say is the best thing you can do for your professional development is work on your personal development. So whatever that looks like, just growing as a human being, wherever it is that you want to grow as a human, because I just really believe that when we're working on ourselves, we can show up most powerfully for our young people. So whatever that might look like. And so I think, what are the avenues for that? I'll give you 3 avenues for personal development. I mean, I think there's great podcasts. Yours is one. But then also there's a lot of podcasts out there about just personal development. How do I become my best self? How do I grow? How do I find my purpose? So finding those, and those are things you can access so easily just on a ride to work, a ride on the bus, a ride in your car. So don't take a lot of time, a lot of effort. Reading is always great. And then there's just so many great professional development opportunities often available, personal and professional development opportunities available through workplaces. So just really looking and exploring at what's available and jumping into anything that you can.
Awesome. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I don't know if I have 3. I just have 1.
Okay, that's fine. We'll take 1.
But this is, well, because you can tell Amy and I, are work and life partners, because my answer is similar. It's just take care of the 5 parts of you. So I would say like physical, emotional, spiritual, mental, and social. If you do like a self-inventory periodically, you killing it, and where are you not? And then invest in the not, but keep killing it in the other areas. Some people are thriving physically, but their social connections have died off, particularly out of the last couple of years, right, that we've been going through. So that's what I would say, balance. And then because you asked, what would you say to the professionals? What I would also say to hiring these professionals is what Amy said, like, consider the whole person developing people. Just because the thing that they're signing up for, you don't see a connection to maybe their job, the better they invest in their whole self, the better they will be for you as a worker.
thank you for sharing that wonderful information with us. Now, let's jump into the show.
Well, first, thank you for taking this time to be part of the show. I know that we are going into summertime madness. Everything gets a little bit crazy around this time for youth development, OST programs, especially if you're managing summer programs. Some of you may already be knee deep in it because you've been doing programming for the last 1 or 2 weeks. I completely understand. So, ladies, let's go ahead and jump into these interview questions. Tell us a little bit about yourself, ladies, and how you got involved in out-of-school time programming or youth development.
I can start a little bit about myself. I am first a woman, and second, I would say one of my strongest identities is being a mom. So I have a 14, soon to be 15-year-old heading off to high school soon, and she is also my connection with out of school time. And also I grew up in it. I went to before care, went to school all day, I went to aftercare. My mom picked me up at 5:59. Please understand, I was all day, okay? She needed that in order to work. I think there's an old school viewpoint of this is just extra daycare or extra, child care, some place where I can put my child, I go do things. No, she had like a 30-minute commute one way, and it was almost 45 to 50 going back, and she needed that. She needed that in order to work. And so I grew up with a love and appreciation and affection for OST time. But then also my child, I became a parent. When was that? Maybe like 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And so I went from picking her up at the end of school to needing that time and needing those people to take good care of my pumpkin. And so I got very invested then. And then also through StandUp, we do a lot of work with out of school time organizations. Youth development is a huge part of what we offer to the world. And so you develop a love for the people that you serve, and a deep connection to them. And like we just invested. We want to see you win.
All I do is win.
No matter what. All we do is win. There's ways.
Had to go with the theme song. How about you, Amy?
Yeah, my path was more around the bend. I really wasn't familiar with OST until my 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, early. I was a classroom teacher. And that's where I kind of started out, got familiar with youth, fell in love with working with young people, fell in love with finding myself in working with young people. I think that was one of the biggest things for me, was just how I found myself in that work for the first time in my life. But then I switched out of traditional education, moved to working in the youth development world, was working for Colorado State University in their extension program, and was kind of tasked with, okay, create youth programs in the city of Denver. And it was through that, yeah, that's just a small little jump there.
So here, create this. What do you mean?
Here you go. Here's your job. So it was, it started creating partnerships out in the world. And that's where I really learned about OST and absolutely fell in love with. I mean, what Lana shared, the people that worked in OST. I mean, absolutely fell in love with the connection to community, the passion, the heart. It changed my life in the most beautiful way. It's hard to even explain the kind of love that I started feeling for the adults that worked in that work. And so I was training kind of some of our volunteers as we were creating programs. And I really developed a passion for working with adults that work directly with young people and just giving them like some really great tools and strategies for doing their work the best that they can. And so I've just never left that world of OST. And so I've had times where I've worked in OST, I've volunteered in OST, and then I've also done a lot of time, training adults that work in OST. And so seeing it from all these different aspects and vantage points has been really interesting. And then now in our work, we see it from a whole different vantage point, which is the people that are running OST programs, the systems that are trying to support OST programs. And so I think that's one of the things is unique for Lana and I, is we have so many vantage points of the work of after school, and that's what we bring to the table. But at the core of it is just a love for the people.
Awesome. Well, tell us about how StandUp got started and what was the idea behind it.
Yeah, so StandUp itself, I mean, I had kind of reached my peak at working for CSU because I didn't have a master's degree. And one of the things that I quickly learned is if you work in the world of higher education, if you don't have a master's degree, there's really only so far you can go in an organization. And I think I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, start my own thing, but it was that recognition of, I love my job and I'm never going to be able to do anything else here. So I jumped and created StandUp. And the initial intention of StandUp was really to create training programs for out of school time, in the out of school time world. I became a certified coach and went through that process. But really the initial intention was supporting out of school time. So it was doing a lot of what I was doing at CSU, but doing it on my own and expanding it.
Right. And for those people that have that idea, because in OST programming, you have people that have so many skills. And what I tell everyone, or try to stress to everyone, that your skills are transferable. You just have to find a way to use it to your best advantage. Because as you and I both know, working in out of school time programming, especially if you're working part-time, you are not getting paid a lot. So you have situations of people that are working 2 to 3 jobs, plus doing OST to make sure that, their needs are being met, their financial needs are being met. And that, as you say, as is expressed earlier, doesn't give you much time for personal time, especially when it comes to your professional development and what you want to do if you want to continue to grow and go forward in this profession. So in that process, what would you suggest that people in OST or workers in OST do to kind of push forward with the skills that they have and trying to find a way to make it work for them?
Yeah, I'm going to start with that. And then, Lana, I'm sure that you have some great thoughts on this too. But I think we all live with an imaginary ceiling, and we don't even necessarily know that it's there. We just think that there's this ceiling. And, you've heard about the glass ceiling. And at CSU, I actually had like a cement ceiling. Like there was nothing I could do there. So then it's like, okay, first let's recognize what is the ceiling. And then recognizing, okay, there's so many ways to go around it. Oh, actually, I can go out this door. And out this door, there's not a ceiling. But part of it is just looking and saying, what is my skill set? Not, wow, I can actually use this somewhere. But I think that we paint ourselves in a box sometimes. I don't have this or I don't have that. We look at what we don't have. And I think shifting that perspective of what are my skills? What can I bring to the table? We work with some out of school time leaders that have worked directly with young people forever, and they're absolutely brilliant. And I find myself asking myself sometimes, like, what is keeping you from moving forward in your career, in doing something new? And I think sometimes they just truly love their community and truly want to stay there and can't see leaving their community.
Mm-hmm.
And so the skill set that's there is just, but it's risky and it's scary. And so it's being willing to step into the risk and being willing to be afraid and try something new. We talk about that a lot, there's a lot. Jumping off a cliff is exhilarating, but it's also scary.
Like, I could potentially hit the ground, but then again, I could fly. You never know.
Yeah, and it's do you choose the safety over the risk?
Mm-hmm.
And that's an important question, I think. And there's no right or wrong. Like sometimes we have to choose the safety, and that's okay too. But it's being in a place of choice then.
Right.
Lana, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would say things. I have two things. The first one is we're talking about like skills. What are the skills that are transferable or the skills that people have? It's not only about like your skills, right? I just want people to know that you're more than what you do. There's something about you that is supremely unique. Like you're here for a specific reason to do specific things that only you can do. Great ways. And so like find out what that greatness is about you. I think a lot of us, we know we can do things, but we have trouble explaining how we're great. And being able to communicate that is a critical part of the process, and there's different things for different groups. So when it comes to, I don't know, women, right, the divide, then there's a woman can express a thing in a certain way, a man expresses it in a certain way, perceived differently than the woman. And so we have learned, observed in how we speak about ourselves, don't come across to this or that. And I think that also applies for different ethnic and racial groups. We have to be careful about, I'm a Black woman. And so my walk, and Amy knows that my walk through the world and in life is going to be different than Amy's as a white woman. That said, that can either be my excuse to stop going or my reason for continuing. And maybe my path is longer than Amy's, or maybe I have to take a different route than Amy's. But there's truly nothing preventing me from actually getting there. There's a lot of stuff slowing me down, sending me sideways, all of that. But if I am diligent, like as human beings, when we decide a thing, we can do it. Like we used to believe the world was flat until somebody was like, you know what I'm saying? We forget that. Like we really thought we were going to go off the edge. We lived in a world that believed that until somebody went all the way around. You see what I'm saying? And so to what Amy's saying, like we are what we believe we are. And so I think the important thing is for us to identify that greatness that's within us. That's also the coach in me. I just believe that everybody's beautifully unique and has so much to offer. We just don't know what it is, or we don't have the language to describe it so that we can use it to move forward. And that's my OST world, like figure it out.
And I know in figuring it out, you go through your ups, your downs, your in-betweens, but once you have it, like you have it and nobody could take it from you. And in building and starting StandUp, how did you begin to put the Flourish Lab together?
How could we not?
well, let's talk about it then. Let's talk about it then.
It's the seeds of the Flourish Lab were planted so many years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
I really, it's looking at a lot of it. Janice was mistake, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
mistakes along the way, and learning from mistakes of working with young people. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's still there's things in the Flourish Lab that are based on mistakes I made as a classroom teacher.
And let's talk about it. So, from give stand up a little bit more definition, as
Mhm.
well as the Flourish Lab, so people can distinguish the two.
Yeah, Lana, you want to take that?
Yeah, so it's funny because people ask me what I do. Even my friends and family, they ask me like periodically, "What do I do?" I don't. Nobody seems to understand what I do. So this is, I just sit at a computer all day and do to do. So what we are doing is we are coaches by nature, by trade, by skill set, right? And so what we do as coaches is we help people and individuals get from wherever they are to wherever they want to be. We help individuals and organizations. And so sometimes that looks like leading workshops. Sometimes that looks like executive coaching. Sometimes that looks like, something different, joining people for a retreat, right? To take them through a process. But the goal for us is to meet people exactly where they are and help them to move to wherever that space is that they want to be. If they're unclear on that space, then we help them more options for themselves so that they can choose, what that is more clear in the youth development world. Well, what that does is that helps us to see the barriers that all of these groups face, helps us to see the wins that they have. And when you put the wins together with the barriers, that's how the Flourish Lab was born. It's like, how can we help to eliminate some of these barriers and push these organizations close to a win? And so
Mm.
the Flourish Lab is an e-learning, online, experiential, human-centered
Mm-hmm.
approach to professional development that serves the out of school time world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, excuse me. I think you said that really well. I think, we've been working in the out of school time world doing live training, site visits, virtual workshops for years and years and years. And this is just now the shift to
Mm-hmm.
doing that same work in an e-learning platform.
Got it. So, as the Flourish Lab, what are some of the things that professionals could look for if wanting to use that platform?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're really looking at the entire series is about 14 hours of e-learning content. We certainly don't expect that someone's going to do all of that right away, that it's going to be over months and years. But it really is designed to have adults look at themselves first before we work with young people. So how do we work on ourselves, show up in a particular way so that we're creating environments where young people thrive? We're grounded in the concept of social and emotional development and social and emotional learning. And it's not about let's go directly and do an activity with young people on social emotional learning. It's let's work on ourselves and my own development. And then I'm going to create environments where social emotional development naturally occurs because I'm present as an adult. I have positive relationships so young people trust me. I've set up experiences and activities where young people are going to have chances to succeed, chances to make mistakes, chances to learn. So they're naturally developing those social emotional skills. That's what we're all about. And then the second piece is everything that we do is grounded in this idea of throwing out the concept of behavior management. One of the things Lana and I talk about a lot, we get a lot of requests and have over the years for give us a behavior management training. And we reject that concept on principle because management means to control. And so whether conscious or unconscious, when we're talking about behavior management, we're asking to give me some strategies to help keep these young people in control or to
Mm-hmm.
control young people.
Mm-hmm.
And we just throw that out on principle.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Flourish Lab is grounded in also how do you begin to shift that mindset that a lot of adults have because that's how we were raised.
Yeah.
And so how do we shift from respect means listen to me, for example, do what I say, listen to me, and to respect means we all value one another.
Mm-hmm.
How do I shift my mindset from like a fear-based mindset to wanting to inspire and connect and relate? How do I shift from punitive consequences, like you're done, you're out, you're sitting out, to restoring and
Mm-hmm.
belonging?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole Flourish Lab is grounded in one, how do we work on ourselves so we create positive environments? And two, how do we begin to shift those mindsets
Mm-hmm.
to, instead of reacting from fear, creating from inspiring and connection.
Lana, anything to add?
I have all the things to add, but I think Amy said it really well.
We could talk a long time.
Yes. Yes. So when people ask me what I do, like all that Amy said, that's what we do.
Okay. Okay. How do you want the Flourish Lab to help professionals in the field? Like when you think about it and what you wanted to do and what impact you wanted to have, like what is that thought process? What is your hope? What is your dream for that?
One of the biggest passions we have in our vision is that every single adult who is working with young people has access to quality professional development before they ever work with a young person. That's our passion. And what we hope the Flourish Lab does is it provides greater accessibility to that. You know, being in an e-learning platform, I mean, your audience is OST people, so I would guess that many people listening know what it means that when we say, how much turnover do you have? How often are you short-staffed? those questions, right? I mean, it's like,
we had a conversation. We're gonna be here forever.
yes. I mean, anyone that's worked in OST for more than maybe a week is very familiar with turnover and very familiar with being short-staffed. And so e-learning solves a lot of that because it provides accessibility. It doesn't solve the turnover necessarily. It doesn't solve but what it does is it allows us to onboard people consistently with consistent language.
Mm-hmm.
So if I quit 2 weeks later and we bring in someone new, they can still get the same training, even if they didn't start at the beginning of the school year or at the beginning of summer camp. So that, and then also, I mean, again, if you're in the OST world, you know that a lot of people that work in OST, like you said earlier, Janice, have several jobs. Might be students, might be, parents, or caring for other family members, or, all very, complexity of schedule. And so e-learning also provides an opportunity for access when you choose access. I can do 10 minutes of the training now when I'm waiting to pick up my child, and then I can do 10 minutes, whatever. There's just a different flexibility in your ability to access the work.
Right. And accessing the work, because I know professional development is not always offered at every organization either, especially when you talk about your full-time and part-time staff. So let's shed a little light on that area. I think this is a great opportunity for those that were very interested in learning more about the field. Like this kind of opens that door to them and gives them the access that they need. Because I know in starting off, like as a part-time worker, I didn't have access to professional development funds. But I knew like I wanted to develop myself in this field because this is what I wanted to do and I wanted to do it for a long time. So for me, it was a case of I'm going to go ahead and put these nickels, quarters, pennies, dimes away. One of these conferences is going to come up. Some of them may be free. Some of them may be under $100 because, if you're going all out, some of them cost you $500 and some change, depending on if you're going out of town and you want to stay. And I would invest in myself that way and take what I learned and come back and try to apply it based on where I was working. And sometimes you can't always make it. But this is a way to get the same quality, if not better, and have it access at your fingertips. How do you feel about that?
Well, so I'm gonna respond kind of from a high level, and then we'll bring it back down. I think because I think some of this is like systemic too and structural. So you think about the nonprofit organizations funds. Where are those funds coming from? Are those funders funding the adults doing the work, or do they want that money to go directly to the children sometimes? And so we're seeing a shift now in the industry. But I think part of it was a systems issue, because if I'm an after school program or a summer program and I get this money from whoever, federal grant, it doesn't matter. They are very particular about how that money is spent. Oftentimes you do not see the flexibility to spend it on adults because they consider it children's money, children's programming, and they want to see that money going directly to the children. So to your point earlier, okay, so great, I get this children's SEL, social emotional learning program, and I spent my money on that. But I didn't spend my money on preparing the professionals who are supposed to teach it to the young people. And that is where the breakdown is happening, you see? And so now we are seeing that shift. And I want to say big snaps to the funders who see that and who are now investing in the adults, who are investing in the young people. So that's part of it. The other part of it is just helping. Let's talk about, because the big money programs, the big names that we all know, they're funded. They can choose how they want to spend their money. But let's talk about the smaller ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, I think, who we want to make sure also has access to this. And so, yes, we do have the Flourish Lab out there, and yes, we do have, pricing or whatever that's out there for it. But truth be told, if an organization is like, we really need this, and this is what we are going to find some type of magical Marvel, DC Comics in action way, okay, to make it happen, because it doesn't work for us if it can't get where it's needed.
Right. Very true. Very true. Amy, you wanted to add?
Yeah, no, I just want to echo that. I mean, we have never not worked with someone because of financial barriers, ever once.
And I know organizations are thankful for your flexibility because sometimes, the numbers may not add up. But if you have someone that's willing to work with you, it helps get the job done. With those things being said, we're going to go ahead and take a brief moment to take a break, and we will be right back.
All right, everyone, welcome back. We went and took a break for a moment, but we're going to go ahead and dive back into our questions for the interview. And my next question for you all is, why do you think it's important for organizations to invest in professional development? So I know in having our previous conversation from where the money comes from and being mindful of how you should spend it, why should organizations put that time or but also that energy into investing in their staff? One of them I know you mentioned was turnover. Hopefully that would be the outcome. Cross our fingers that they're prepared enough so when they step on the floor and do the job, they have enough background knowledge that they could pull from instead of being pushed out here and say, I hope you survive. And you try it through trial and error. So why should professional development be one of the top things, especially when you're doing onboarding for your staff for nonprofit and OST organizations?
Lana, you go ahead. I was thinking about, Lana, that picture that you share about the kids or the client.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's kind of similar to that book, Feed the Teachers So They Don't Eat the Kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's the title of the book.
I've seen it in the store. I was like, but it's true. Yeah.
It's true. It's something about, like, you don't invest in the client, you invest in the employee, and the employees take care of the clients. Mm-hmm. So it's a similar concept of, like, why wouldn't you?
Right.
I would love to hear the argument why not. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much more data that supports the way that we're proposing to approach this work. The other thing is, I want to speak specifically to leaders and leadership and this of promoting people. Given that, there's a lot of bias in this world, and I'm speaking outside of even racial and ethnic bias, like we just have biases all up in us all the time. And that goes into who we see as leaders and who we decide to promote and why we decide to promote and all of those things. The leadership is the single greatest indicator of the state of a team. Whatever your leader is doing, then you look at the team and you can see a reflection of it. If your leader is in chaos, your organization is in chaos. If your leader is, I don't know, sexist, then the body that they serve is probably going to reflect those things. And so really the question is, I don't think there's an argument for investing in people, the people that work with young people. I think what I would press organizations to lean into is holding your leaders accountable to doing the work themselves. Because if the leaders are into this and they're doing it and they're modeling it, then it oozes out of them. It bleeds out onto everything, and then you can start to effectively build the culture that you want for your program.
I mean, for me, it's very simple. If you are working in an out of school time program as a leader, you care about young people. You want young people to thrive. And if you want young people to thrive, it's imperative you are also committed to adults thriving. One cannot exist without the other.
Point blank, period.
Yep.
And for those smaller organizations that may have trouble investing, what would be some alternatives for them, for their staff to get the skills and the training that they need?
It's funny because you say have trouble. I'm always curious about what exactly are the barriers. Because, well, okay, let's identify really clearly what is your goal, the most important thing to you. If the most important thing to you is to have competent, capable people and loving on the young people, then let's focus on that. Because whatever that little worksheet is out that's getting in the way, that is not actually a real barrier you say is important to you. You get what I'm saying? So I don't think that, I think really it's really just a priorities and perspective issue with smaller organizations. And I could say that as a former small business owner myself. At least that was a franchise. When I owned that gym, it is really hard to get out the weeds. You're in that grind every day. Everything is on fire to you. In reality, everything's not on fire, Jay Lee. It's just not. Some things are smoking a little bit. Some things are just a little hot. Other things are warm. But to you, because you're holding it all, it feels like everything's on fire. And that's why you bring someone in like Amy or me, to just help you figure that out. And get to what you really want and what is actually in the way of that. And let's address that.
Right.
And I would follow up on that. I mean, Lana and I tend to think the same about things. And the first thing when you ask that question, the first thing my mind went to is shift your focus from why we can't to what can we do. And it's, human beings have a natural negativity bias. It's how we're wired. And so it's noticing, okay, what can I do? We've worked with small organizations time, and it's, again, as Lana said, it's when that shift is made to what can I do, or I see this as a priority, the resources are always there.
Right.
It's really it's an interesting phenomenon. The resources are always there when you choose what your priorities are.
Tying this into the Flourish Lab, what things can people find in the Flourish Labs that they can begin to invest in and kind of get their staff to consume? What are some classes or what are some demos that you may offer?
So I'll let Amy talk about actual modules and how it's set up, but how someone could get involved is they would go to our website and sign up for a webinar. So the flourishlab.org, and they would just click webinars. And in the webinar, we tightened it up to 1 hour. In that 1 hour, you're going to meet us. You're going to figure out the why behind the Flourish Lab, and you will actually see a demo, several demos of it live and in action. So and then there's a Q&A time. So it's not a one-way webinar where you can't talk to people. We don't like those. So you can ask all your questions. The goal, the intention behind the webinar is we understand the value of your hour. So we want you to leave knowing whether this is for you or whether this is not. And so far, we've had 100% of people that visited the webinar to say, I see the value. I want to figure this out.
Yeah, so again, it's about 14 hours of content. We focus on an understanding of just some of those concepts that we were talking about earlier of just what is this thing called social emotional development? How does it relate to me as an adult? And then also, that mindset shift that we were talking about. Then we really focus on building positive relationships with young people, how I'm showing up as an adult, my adult presence, and then how I am creating lessons that inspire. So that's our key content. And so the core modules are it's about 4 hours of content of kind of those introductions. And then we have 24 smaller modules that are 15 to 20 minutes each that are really specific around things like beginning to identify your bias. How do I pause when I feel like I'm about ready to react? So very specific strategies as well. So in addition to the webinars, great thing, I would also say we're really working on getting our social media going and providing some valuable content there as well. And that's like free content, right? Where you can kind of connect to what we're doing, see little snippets of things over time. So Facebook and Instagram are our primary ones that we'll be using.
Awesome. And before we end the show, I'll go ahead and give you time to go ahead and put those plugins there so people know where to find you on social media.
The Flourish Lab is Facebook, The Flourish Lab. And then The Flourish Lab Experience is us on IG.
Okay. Awesome, awesome. Well, ladies, that's the end of our portion of the interview part. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into our Professionals Lounge.
Professional Lounge is a segment of the show that allows guests to share advice and tips with other practitioners in the OST and youth development field about how they can begin growing their gifts and talents, but also develop themselves as professionals in the field. On today's Professional Lounge, I asked
some tips and tricks. What should OST and youth development professionals keep in mind when they are making a professional development plan?
Give them one or two.
What they should keep in mind when they're making a professional development plan. Okay, I've got one.
Okay.
One.
Okay.
Here's my one. It's not about theory. It's not about best practices. It's not about research when you're working with your adults that are working directly with young people. It's about give me some strategies that I can use today that relate directly to what I'm doing in this moment with young people. That's the key. And then give me some strategies, some ways that I can look at myself and develop myself. Your people that are working directly with young people, they really don't care about your theory and best practices and research.
Facts.
Right.
To approach it like you would approach anything. I've not met the organization that care about equity work now since the last couple of years. Everybody's like, oh yeah, we care about equity. Equity's our thing. Well, if equity is your thing, that's what I tell people. If you're going to go and do for a group, have you gone to talk to that group to listen to what they need and want? We're always trying to bring something to people and we haven't sat with them and really listened yet. And I don't mean sending out one survey to 50 people that 5 people responded to. That's not equity. That's not equitable. Figure it out and listen and then do that. Do what they say.
Well, everyone, that brings us to the end of our show. I'd like to thank Amy and Lana for being here with us and sharing such wonderful information. You all gave us a lot of nuggets and truths, but also something to think about when it comes to developing ourselves as professionals. Hopefully, we can do this again sometime soon. If you enjoyed this episode and feel you received some good information, give us a review on Apple Podcasts or visit the Podchasers website and leave us a comment. This will help us get some feedback on the show and collect testimonials for our personal website. Share us with your friends, share us with your family, share us with your network. Help us spread the word about how OST programs are impacting our youth as well as our communities. We can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. Well, that's all I have for today. In the words of Mr. Arthur Ashe, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Until next time, bye-bye.